we would do things like you'd get some money to go do an experiment or just give blood or just go and be like a sleep deprivation kind of thing. And they'd give you sometimes an injection and see what happened to you. And then you get paid like $100.
That's a month's rent in Buffalo plus 2 weeks worth of groceries in those days.
You could go over to Canada and get a month's worth of Labatt's in your trunk.
Turn your speakers up to 11 because it's time for Too Much Effing Perspective, the podcast that asks musicians and entertainers to relive the most Spinal Tap moments that may not have been funny when they happened, but are hilarious in retrospect. I'm your host, Alan Keller, former lead singer of the least heralded Chicago band, The Falling Wallendas.
And I'm your co-host, Alex Hoffman, former tour manager for Radiohead and former lead singer of the least heralded Milwaukee band, The Vainglorious.
Our guest today is from the band whose masterpiece, Deserter Songs, was named 1998's Album of the Year by the esteemed British publication New Music Express. Mercury Rev guitarist, Grasshopper.
Grasshopper tells us what it was like to work with the bands Garth, Hudson, and Levon Helm, how Mercury Rev was once kicked off stage at Lollapalooza by the mayor of Denver for being too loud, and the time he met psychedelic drug proponent Dr. Timothy Leary.
So without further ado, let's go to the TMEP show.
It really puts perspective on things, though, doesn't it?
Not too much. There's too much
yeah,
effing perspective now.
Alex, I recently decided to dust off my trusty Music Man guitar and start playing some open mics.
How much are you being paid for that endorsement, that live read?
I didn't know you could endorse open mics in general, but you're a very crafty businessman. I know you would do that.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, good for you. That's great.
Thank you. But in the past, I've always had someone else play guitar with me because, as you well know, when I was a child, I had both my hands severed in a bizarre gardening accident, and they were reattached backwards. Needless to say, the open mic I played a couple weeks ago did not go very smoothly. I played like crap. For some reason, the speakers, my guitar was 10 times louder than my voice, so I could hear every clam that I hit. And then I got super self-conscious because I haven't been on stage in a long time. And it was honestly one of the worst performances I've ever given in my life. And that is saying something. But mostly I feel like I failed my songs. I mean, they don't deserve to be treated like I treated my song Kindred Spirits that night.
Well, there's always the next time. You're going to do it again?
Hopefully. I'm intent on getting better. I don't let failure get in my way. I have my dear friend Andrew Williams from the Williams Brothers helping me with some guitar lessons, and my pal and former TMEP show guest Tierney Sutton is helping me get my voice back in shape.
Yeah, that's great.
But I really should be banned from playing guitar. It's just awful how I have never mastered it.
Well, your singing makes up for it. People might not know from your speaking voice in this podcast that your singing voice is extraordinarily pleasant to listen to. People can listen to some of our early episodes to hear some of those Wallendas hits.
They could go on Spotify or Apple Music or anything. What are you talking about? They have to go to our early... I mean, that'd be nice if they went and checked out our back catalog, but...
Yeah, what the hell do I care if they go to Spotify and you get what, some 3-cent royalty check sometime next year? I want them to
Is it that much?
Okay. I want them to listen to our old episodes. But in any case, I've always been amazed by people who are naturals at anything, particularly music. And I guess historically it was smart of you to surround yourself with great musicians in the Wallendas. You got pretty lucky there.
That's true. They covered up a lot of my guitar exploits. Our drummer, Todd Zuckerman, who was our first guest on the podcast, is now considered one of the best drummers in the world. Our guitarist, Ted Kezio, and Arch Alcatraz, as he was known during the Rumdillion days, but now he's back to his real name, Arch Alcantara. They're both virtuosos. And of course, my lifelong pal, Scott Bennett, who went on to play with Brian Wilson, can pick up anything and play it as well as anyone.
We have a similar natural virtuoso on the show today. Grasshopper from Mercury Rev is known for his guitar playing, of course, but he can also play clarinet, keyboards, harmonica.
Well, it's interesting because the ability to play woodwind and brass instruments is something a lot of multi-instrumentalists can't do. So it's even more effing impressive.
Yeah, you got to be able to work with a reed and be able to buzz your lips. And I mean, it's like doing gymnastics with your face.
Well, some people have said my guitar playing sounds like I'm playing with my lips. So, there is that.
Well, in our episode of Slater Kinney, you talked about being shocked so bad on stage that you could run a model train set off your lips. So
that's true. And I certainly couldn't feel anything to this day. So that's why
Yeah.
it's easy to play guitar with my lips. Yes.
your lips have been immortalized in this show. But in any case, let's get to our conversation with Grasshopper. But first, a short break.
And now a guy whose second gig with Mercury Rev was opening for Bob Dylan. Here's Grasshopper. Grasshopper, welcome. I want to ask you the overriding question in our interviews. What is your favorite scene from the movie This Is Spinal Tap?
The whole thing is magnificent, and it's hard to pick one. But being in a band and things, I love the scene where they're trying to find the stage and going through a maze and like, it's Hello Cleveland. But they can't find their way. That just happened with us. We just came back from Europe and we played 2 different clubs in London. And it was kind of like the same deal where you had to walk through this room, this maze, and then outside and then come back through to get to the stage. And it's just like a lot to remember.
You have to walk on the passenger side too because of how they...
Yeah, you could be hit by a car at any second. Or
Well, that's awesome. I've listened to you guys for years, and I always thought you were a British band until this interview,
My dog's barking.
That's great. And he doesn't have an affected British accent yet. I think Madonna was there for 2 days, and she had a British accent. But yeah, Spinal Tap had this trajectory where things were going shitty. They were about to disband, and then all of a sudden, Japan picked up Sex Farm, right?
Yeah.
You guys had the same kind of thing in the late 90s. Then you did Deserter Songs, and the UK picked it up, right? The UK kind of was your Tokyo, right?
Yeah.
The UK lost its mind, right? That was NME's album of the year.
Yeah. They lost
That's
their
amazing.
mind. But in the UK, they always kind of loved us better than anywhere else. And then during Deserter Songs, it really kicked into high gear. It was album of the year and all these magazines and stuff. And then it became crazy. We're like walking down the street, people would be like, Grasshopper, right? Trying to get into your hotel room. And we had to check in under different names. It was like,
Wow.
Everyone should have that experience at least once in their life.
That's rock star stuff.
Yeah, that's rock star stuff.
I want to interject here real quick. So this is just a little rock star trivia sidebar. So Grasshopper, when I was tour managing the Bodines, we were in Philadelphia. Our tour bus pulled up to a hotel late at night, maybe 11 p.m. or whatever. And there was another tour bus that was already there. So we went in. I'm talking to the front desk. I said, who's here? They said, oh, Red Hot Chili Peppers. I said, oh, that's great. And for some reason, the desk clerk gave me their rooming list. And so I had this thing and I looked at it and there were 2 pseudonyms on there. One was Styles Bitchley and one was Sammy Sneech. The trivia quiz is, which chili would you say is Styles Bitchley and which would you say is Sammy Sneech?
Man, I think Sammy Sneech might be Flea. Am I wrong?
I think you're probably right. Doesn't Anthony seem like he'd be Styles Bitchley?
Yeah.
That seems like a slam dunk.
My fake one used to be Jack Bishop because it was kind of like Joey Bishop, but Jack Bishop.
Why? Did you all have Rat Pack names?
No, just me.
Well, a couple more things about Deserter Songs. You had the late, great Garth, Hudson, and Levon Helm playing it, right? From the band.
Yes. Garth just passed away recently, not too far from where I live. He was in a home over here. But yeah, I mean, we used to see those guys and Rick Danko around town, and we just asked if they would play on a record. And then they said, yeah. Levon was like, yeah. But I'm still friends with Amy Helm. She's great.
Didn't Levon have a studio around there?
Yeah, he still does. And they do. He had the Midnight Ramble, and they still do shows there. And it's a cool venue and stuff. So yeah, it's still going.
Well, I interviewed the guitarists from New Pornographers, and they were recording there. And
Oh, yeah.
I guess the beer bottle tipped like this at a 45-degree angle and stuck there. and they thought it was the ghost of Levon because it just stayed at a 45 angle for like 2 days before it fell over.
I believe that. Levon loved Coca-Cola. You'd walk into the studio and there was just pallets and pallets of the Mexican bottles of Coca-Cola. He would drink them like water,
Which is probably something he migrated to after
after other things.
other things. Yeah, exactly.
Well, you just got Jack out of the equation, right?
Right. Any other Spinal Tap moment stories you can think of involving the guys from the band?
Well, Garth was a real character. I mean, he had narcolepsy and stuff, and he would just fall asleep in the middle of recording things. But when he was doing a song I wrote, the Hudson line, he was doing the sax lines on it. And he brought like 4 different saxophones, and he brought this electronic roll-in sax. He's like, all right, roll the tape. And then he'd play like 2 notes here, a couple notes there. And then Jonathan and I were looking at each other like, what the hell's going on? We go, okay, roll back the tape. Go on another track. And then he'd pick up another saxophone, and then he'd play like 2, 3 notes, 2, 3 notes. And then he did that like 5 times with each of the, and then he had it all worked out in his head. And at the end, it all came together.
Wow.
And was like the part. It was insane.
That's so beautiful.
He put that much thought into it, but he was so eccentric. He was playing different notes on different saxophones and stuff. But we also invited him to play with us in London. And he brought with him this huge investigative file, like a lawyer has or whatever. He opened it up and there was all this sheet music of polkas and stuff. And he was this huge polka fan, Jimmy Sturr and stuff. He would start playing all these polkas. And he was, we were in the Columbia Hotel in London, which is kind of like a rock hotel. There's a whole scene there and stuff. He just pulled out his accordion and was playing all these polka tunes, and he got this big crowd. Everybody was around him at the bar.
Great.
It's great.
Is that funny? Jeez.
That is just so cool.
Didn't you create an instrument like a bowed saw that had the effect of a theremin?
It was called the TEDx Wave Accumulator, and it was like all these oscillators and different subharmonics, and it was kind of like a theremin, and the patent was pending on it. But now with computers and stuff, you can get an app and just do probably this. In those days, we would line up loops and it would take hours and hours and hours. Now you can do that stuff in like 2 seconds with AI or something. I don't know.
All those inventors, like Tom Scholz from Boston, he invented the Rockman.
Yeah. Now you can buy like MXR puts out a pedal. Hey, the Rockman. And it sounds just like that.
Totally. I brought up the theremin because when I was in a band called the Falling Wallendas, and our big song, which is not that big, was called Porcupine, and it had a big theremin part.
I think I saw you before the Falling Wallendas.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's cool.
And the weird thing is, when I was a kid, I went to Kings Island, which was in Ohio, and it was like a Hanna-Barbera theme park.
Oh, yeah.
And they had like a fake little Eiffel Tower there. But I saw the Flying Wallendas there, the real Flying Wallenda family, do their tightrope act. And I got all their autographs. I was probably like 10 years old. And then maybe like 2 years later, Carl Wallenda died.
In Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine in LA, he knew one of the Wallenda grandkids. So he had a Christmas party and I was coming, and he had planned to have Nick Wallenda come up to me and act like he was outraged by our band name.
That's good.
And I came too late because it would have been so fucking funny if that would have happened.
Oh, man. That would have been good.
That's probably lucky, Alan. I could have seen you throw it a punch before you knew it was actually a staged thing.
And then I would have been our true Falling Wallenda, I'm sure.
Yeah, indeed you would have.
I read that you and I share a similar Spinal Tap moment, Grasshopper. Is it true that you got booted from Lollapalooza by Perry Farrell himself because you guys were too loud?
That's half true. We were booted because we were too loud on the second stage, but it wasn't Perry. It was the mayor of Denver. And he said, it sounded like we were a bus idling out of control. And so then our sound man was taken away in a headlock.
Wow.
We just kept playing, and then they cut the power. I think Dinosaur Jr. was playing at the same time, and they're loud
Yeah.
on the main stage, but they said that we were louder than them and just noise. And so they cut us. But no, Perry was like afterwards laughing his ass off about it.
I'm so glad that he wasn't the one to pull, because I remember once I was at a restaurant and Nash Cato from Urge Overkill had the audacity to tell the band to turn down at this restaurant. And also, one of my favorite Spinal Tap moments in my own career is we're playing the State Fair in Wisconsin, and we were told to turn down because we were disturbing the pigs.
That's good.
So, yes.
Not disturbing the peace, but disturbing the pigs.
The pigs, because there's pig races there, and we don't want to disturb the pigs.
Yeah.
I want to ask something else about Lollapalooza in 1993. So an incredible lineup: Alice in Chains, Primus, you mentioned Dinosaur Jr., Fishbone, Arrested Development, Front 242, Babes in Toyland, Tool, and Rage Against the Machine were the main stage acts. And then, of course, the Jim Rose Circus sideshow was there and, a bunch of other stuff. I mean, honestly, that is such an incredible snapshot of 1993. Any Spinal Tap moments from interacting with Alice in Chains or Babes in Toyland or Rage or any of them?
Babes in Toyland were great. They were like really awesome. And Tool backstage, I just remember they had this gym, almost like a portable gym where there were treadmills and weightlifting stuff. And we were just like, this is really weird, But one weird thing that happened was, I forget which town it was in. It was probably in San Francisco or something. But at the time, our drummer, his name is Jimmy Chambers, and I was sitting at a table. I saw in the distance that Jimmy was over, getting his food. And I said, "Hey, Jimmy, I'm over here." Meanwhile, this man with gray hair and a smiling face waved, and he came over and sat because I was like motioning, "Come here, we're sitting over here." He came down and sat, and he goes, "I'm glad you invited me to sit here. I'm Timothy Leary." It was Timmy.
Oh.
I was saying, "Jimmy, come here," and he thought I was saying Timmy. So then me and
That's so wild.
So then Jimmy, Timmy, and I had lunch together at the catering.
That's a great story. That is like the reason we do this show, because so much weird stuff happens just by virtue of people being in these situations.
Yeah.
So I was on tour with Radiohead that summer of 93 on the Pablo Honey album. And we did a co-headline that fall with Belly, and we needed a production manager and a monitor engineer. So we hired the guy who he came straight from Dinosaur Jr. to us to fill that role, this guy named Rick. And he was a weird, kind of aggressive dude, and I think everybody was kind of scared of him. Everybody in the band, in both bands, everybody in the crew. I remember Belly's manager telling me that he didn't want to cross him on some questionable expenses and things like that came through. But I remember one time I was having to do the tour accounting as part of my job, and I went into his hotel room once to pick up his receipts or some bullshit like that. And he had a towel laid out on the bed, and he had a pistol in pieces, cleaning his handgun on a day off.
Nice.
I knew, man,
This is
whatever
for
happens,
real.
happens. Yeah.
This is for real.
You guys got into music because you were making soundtracks for film, right? And your first album is basically part of the soundtracks that you were making for your friend's film from school, right?
Yeah. Yeah. In Buffalo, I was in film school with this guy, Tony Conrad, who was involved with the Velvet Underground, and he made an album with Faust and stuff like that. But he actually found the book on the subway called The Velvet Underground, and he brought it back. He was roommates with John Cale and stuff. Before they were called Velvet Underground, he played with them when they were like the Ostriches or
Wow.
whatever. So Jonathan and I and David Baker started making music just for student films. And we got a few jobs because Buffalo's so close to Canada. we got a few jobs for the CBC, just doing like these nature film soundtracks and stuff. Back then, you could make money. You could live off for a couple months. Just you do a little song like that. Somebody gives you $500, and the rent back then in Buffalo was like $70 a month or whatever. And so
The old days.
fantastic.
That's funny because I kind of came at it from a different angle. You got into music through film. I got into film through music. Back in the mid 90s, a song from the Falling Melendas called Clove Oil and Demerol off our album Belittle was going to be in a pivotal scene in a Nicolas Cage movie.
Oh, wow.
And it was kind of exciting because we were actually even written into the script. However, at some point, they decided to replace our song with a more popular genre. So they got a rap song instead.
Oh, man.
And, I was kind of miffed. So I decided, hey, if they're not going to put my songs in their movie, I'm going to write my own movie and put my songs in it. So that's how I started screenwriting. I wrote my first script called Bandorama, and I've been writing that stuff ever since.
That's great.
So it's kind of the opposite of what you did. You got into music through film. I got into film through music.
I wanted to be a filmmaker. I made some films and things like that, but then film was so expensive to buy the film, to have it developed, to sync up the sound and everything, that I was like, this costs a lot. And so it was just cheaper to do a band. And in Buffalo, there was this place, the Continental, and it was this great bar, and there was like a dance place upstairs, and it went till 4 a.m. But I used to play there in various different bands, Zippy and the Pinheads, and we did like all Stooges and Ramones and stuff. And we opened for the Goo Goo Dolls.
Awesome.
And then Jonathan and I were doing early Mercury Rev. And I was just playing in like a bunch of different bands, playing bass or drums or whatever. There's this cool band called Sonny and Chernobyl. Like Sonny and Cher, but Sonny and Chernobyl.
Oh, that's a good one.
And
that's a good one.
Boy, that is right up your street, Alan.
Yeah, that really is.
It was like industrial, kind of like Einstürzende Neubau.
That's one of the great puns I've ever heard. I was in a band named Women's Liberace.
That is really good.
But Sonny and Chernobyl is even better.
Sonny and Chernobyl.
Obviously, film is still ridiculously expensive to make. I've been in LA trying to make film for 20 years now. And I actually had reached out to Sean Baker, who won the Academy Award for Anora, to do this one movie that I had set up at Netflix with Elizabeth Banks and Keegan-Michael Key. And I reached out to him to be the director after he did Tangerine, which was his movie he made on an iPhone, which kind of broke him. Yeah. He made Anora for what was an enormous amount of money for him, $6 million. Obviously not much to make a film. But yeah, he just won 3 Academy Awards.
That's amazing.
But it's a bummer. When I had music in my life, if I had 10 songs, I'd record it. I'd figure it out. But you can't make a fucking feature film for $1 million even. It's almost impossible.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And
I can't believe you guys don't do more scoring because your orchestral arrangements are gorgeous, so perfect for movies. I'm just surprised you're not all over those.
Me too.
We're together on that. If I ever get my movie made, though, we'll talk.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to talk about another funny Spinal Tap moment of yours. You made money being a guinea pig for Big Pharma, right? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, yeah. Myself, Jonathan, and Wayne Coyne from the Flaming Lips, we would do things like you'd get some money to go do an experiment or just give blood or just go and be like a sleep deprivation kind of thing. And they'd give you sometimes an injection and see what happened to you. And then you get paid like $100.
That's a month's rent in Buffalo plus 2 weeks worth of groceries in those days.
You could go over to Canada and get a month's worth of Labatt's, in your trunk.
Did you have any side effects from any of the experiments? Just took a while, right?
Yeah.
I remember once I was living in Chicago, working at the Chicago Reader, and I was saving up for a demo tape. And I answered an ad because I actually typed the ads for a sperm donor. So I go to a place and they basically gave you a urine collection and said, go to the bathroom and just churn it out. And I'm like, I can't do this. I got a whole method here. I gotta, there's steps I have to go through, right? So I just gave it back the bottle. I said, I'm coming back next week with a better frame of mind. So I came back the following week, and let's just say I produced, but not very much. And I went up to this Russian lab tech, and she takes a hold of the bottle and she looks at it and she goes, that's not enough. Go back. And I said, I can't go back. Do you know how this works? And I never went back, and I never got paid.
We know your shortcomings were not terminal, Alan. I mean, he does have two beautiful daughters. So
that's right. I saved
anyway,
it up.
It all worked out. I want to ask you about the Buffalo music scene, Grasshopper, because you mentioned Goo Goo Dolls. Of course, Ani DeFranco is there and has her label Righteous Babe, and you guys are from there. Any Spinal Tap moments with your fellow Buffalonians?
I don't know about Spinal Tap moments, but like David Lynch moments. It was a weird scene. I mean, Buffalo could have been like another Seattle at the time, because there was bands like the Black Cats and the Ramrods and stuff, which were kind of like Mudhoney and the Melvins and things like that. Like a couple of years before all that Sub Pop and things broke out, but there was no scouts or anything there to see it all happening. That band I played with, Zippy and the Pinheads, the guy was just an incredible front man. This guy, Scott, he was kind of an Iggy Pop type, just going crazy and doing backflips and cutting himself on stage and things. But there was like a whole scene there. And the thing is, we were one of the only bands, myself and Jonathan, who were like, we want to go play England or play around the country and see other places. And a lot of the bands from there were kind of like, oh, why would you do that? You can just play here in Toronto. And I don't blame them for it. It was kind of like they just wanted to play like Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, and Toronto, and just do that scene and make enough money to live and buy, 40 ounces of Mickey's Big Mouths or something.
Not dreaming too big, right? Not dreaming too big.
Yeah. But there's something beautiful about that too.
Right? It's all about being content.
Yeah. And White Lotus, where the character in Cicely F. Murray Abrams, I was like, Wanderlust, you got that from me. That's that Wanderlust to go out and spread your seed of music or whatever, your art. And I think a lot of people in Western New York didn't have it as much. Like they were just happy there. They were just content.
Yeah. I went from the Milwaukee music scene, where I'm from, to Chicago there. And it was just such a remarkable jump in terms of how enterprising the people in Chicago were. I mean, when we were in Chicago, we had the biggest dreams. We were going to be the biggest band in the world, right? But in Milwaukee, it's like, yeah, we're going to play Chicago.
Yeah.
This is a story I've told before, but in 1990, Women's Liberace was looking for a place to do our demo. And so I called Butch Vig at Smart. And I said, so what are you guys doing there now? And whoever I talked to said, well, we got this really great band from Chicago coming in called the Smashing Pumpkins. And then there's this band from Seattle coming in, Nirvana. And I'm like, okay, well, how much an hour are you? And it's $25 an hour. I go, no, I can do $20 an hour in Milwaukee. I'm just going to stay here and not record at the same time as the Pumpkins and Nirvana. So yeah, it's a little different perspective, right?
Right. You saved
I saved $50 and I remained obscure for the rest of my life.
Grasshopper, we occasionally have our head writer ChatGPT dig up some Spinal Tap moments for us. However, we find out at the most inopportune times that old Chatty sometimes gets it wrong. So we're going to throw 3 at you today, and you can either confirm or deny that they're true.
Okay.
And if true, please feel free to embellish. The first one says, the time Mercury Rev nearly blew up a studio. During the recording of, is it Bosie's?
Yeah, Bosie's.
During the recording of Bosie's in 1993, Mercury Rev was experimenting with all kinds of sonic chaos. At one point, they brought a massive air conditioning unit into the studio and ran a microphone inside of it to capture the mechanical hum. The problem, The unit was still connected to the building's power supply, and according to legend, this nearly caused an electrical fire, leading to panic and an emergency shutdown. Confirm or deny?
Confirm. That happened, and it overloaded the whole system and caused some chaos within the studio. They thought we blew the speakers, but it was just a circuit in there. It was just changing a fuse, really.
Oh, thank goodness.
So it was, thank goodness, that time there was no Home Depot. So I don't know where we went, Radio Shack or something. And it was all worked out, but some chaos for a little bit, a few hours there.
We'll ring that one up as a confirm. Number 2 is the fire extinguisher incident. While on tour in the early 90s, frontman Jonathan Donahue and original singer David Baker reportedly got into an onstage argument that ended with Baker spraying a fire extinguisher all over the stage, completely covering the band in foam. The set ended abruptly with the audience half stunned, half amused. Confirm or deny?
Confirm. And there was Baker hit us up with a fire extinguisher, which led foam all over everything. And then we had to, cut the show.
Fortunately, you took that medical drug back in your experimental days.
Right.
That combated the poison from fire extinguishers.
Yeah, hopefully.
What a happy coincidence. Did the instruments survive?
I mean, everything was fine. None of the instruments and stuff had foam. It was more us humans had foam and
Got it.
and maybe on the monitors and stuff, but it was wiped off and things.
Okay, good. Here's number 3, ChatGPT. The legendary strip club listening party. When Deserter Songs was about to be released, Mercury Rev's record label bizarrely decided to host the album's listening party at a strip club. The band, known for their cinematic, dreamy sound, sat there as dancers performed to their lush arrangements. The surreal contrast of string sections and lap dances had them wondering if they were living a Spinal Tap subplot. Confirm or deny?
I think that's half true. Somebody did something like that, but we were not present.
Really?
I don't know. I think there was a listening party somewhere like in Atlanta at the Claremont or something, and we heard about it, but we were like, what the hell were you thinking?
Oh.
I'm going to show you one thing and tell me if this causes you to have any reminiscences.
Oh, yeah.
A Fostex X15, which is the original 4-track cassette recorder that I have hundreds of tapes. I bought these over the years on eBay and they never work. And I finally got one to work. And I'm like, oh, good. I'm going to listen to all these tapes. And I've had it for a year and I never listened to one. At some point, I got to do that. But yeah, that's a crucial piece of equipment, wasn't it, at the time?
Yeah. We did a lot of demos with those. Even in the studio on the records, there was something about that circuit. I think Fostex or whatever did a box that was just the preamp of that or something, because it was something with the compression that was so great that made things sound amazing. Yeah, we used to run tracks through that into the board or
Oh, really?
amp, and yeah, because of that compression thing that was going on in those.
That was such a revolution when that happened. I remember getting it, and I can't figure out how to use anything. And I don't know how I ended up knowing how to use that. But I mean, like, I wrote exclusively on that for like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I remember all the demos we did on those. And I remember the Flaming Lips manager saying, like, after recording the album with Dave Fridman, I think she was like, it's really good, but doesn't quite sound like the 4-track.
I hate that. Yeah, the Walendas on our second album, we did a demo for one song and we actually ended up recording it at the studio. It was like, this is as good as the demo. And for some reason, we led with that song. So our album leads with a demo and it sounds like a demo. And I'm like, what the fuck were we thinking?
But that happens. I mean, you hear about that all the time, right? That the demos have the energy and they're in the living room or the basement or whatever. And then you get into the poshness of the studio and the pressure and all that. It just doesn't sound the same.
Yeah.
Well, Dan Wilson said that, right? Dan Wilson was a guest, from Semisonic, and he recorded with Adele. And I think the song that they ended up having a huge hit on was the demo.
Someone Like You.
Someone Like You, yeah.
Yeah. It was a piano and voice demo. Right, exactly. Well, listen, Grasshopper, we have really enjoyed this. This has been really a ton of fun. And thank you for your time. We always wrap up by asking, where can our listeners keep up on what's happening with Mercury Rev and the things that you're working on and that sort of stuff?
At www.mercuryrev.com. And yeah, I mean, just wherever.
Are you on the socials?
We're on the socials.
Grasshopper, thanks so much for showing up. This was really a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, Grasshopper. Okay, wait a minute. How is it that a guy who goes by Grasshopper comes up with Jack Bishop as his hotel pseudonym? Is that the best he could do? Especially compared to like Styles Bitchley and Sammy Sneach? I mean, come on. So listeners, if you were a rock star who just wanted a little peace and quiet at your hotel while on tour, what name would you choose? Let us know. Email us at hello@tmepshow.com or DM us at tmepshow on Instagram. We may call out your rock star name in an upcoming episode. Thanks to Grasshopper for sharing his stories. The one about serendipitously lunching with Dr. Timothy Leary backstage at Lollapalooza, that is an instant classic. And speaking of instant classics, stick around right after these credits. Alan's song Kindred Spirits, which he mentioned in the intro and recorded with his band Pitbull and Melendez, is coming right up. Too Much Effing Perspective is a Milwaukee Talkies original. Our editor is Gretchen Kilby. Our music composer is J.K. Harrison. Please follow us on Instagram at TMEP Show. Visit our website at tmepshow.com to sign up for our email list and find our other episodes featuring rock stars, comedians, and entertainment luminaries whose bizarro stories we enjoy and we think you will too on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen.
Although it would be as great as having armadillos in our trousers, this podcast is not affiliated with This Is Spinal Tap, and no person or entity connected with the film has sponsored or endorsed its content. This podcast is not affiliated, sponsored, or licensed by Authorized Spinal Tap LLC or Century of Progress Productions.
This boy I knew was taken away. And what he did was the talk of the day. They all said they knew him, but he went his own way. How well I knew him, well I'd never say. Kindred spirits, never met someone like you. Kindred spirits, never met someone so true. I knew the jokes were making their rounds about this poor frail kid who never made a sound. I knew what he did and I knew how he felt. What happened between us, oh, I'd never tell. and soon he never was mentioned again. I never felt lonelier than I felt spirits, I can no longer pretend. Kindred spirits, that winter day, my world did end, and I lost a very dear friend.
Evergreen Podcast Network.